Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm gonna give you my Superman review. So, but it's gonna be a little weird one. This does have spoilers for sure. So if you are still haven't seen Superman, you don't want to be spoiled, no problem. Click away, come back later, or don't. It's up to you. But at the same time, this is a different review. I'm not going to go beat for beat for the film. This isn't a recap of the film. It's to me, it's a little bit of kind of my impressions of the film. And I'm speaking about this from the standpoint of a comic book fan who likes the comic books. As many of you, if you've been to my channel for any length of time, you know I really like Superman in the 60s and 70s, i.e. the Dick Superman. I enjoyed those comics. I like Superman as a character. And if we're getting really serious, and it's rare, but every now and then I'm drinking with some buddies, we're having some whiskey, and I get very kind of deep and morose about Superman. And to me, the crux of what makes Superman Superman is that he's internally extremely conflicted. You have a man who has no home. He was jettisoned off of his home planet. He knows he doesn't belong. He feels a kinship to his adoptive parents. But at the same time, he knows he's not like them. He knows that he has to keep himself in complete emotional check, but he also has grown up with values around being genuine and being, kind of filled with a connection to the people around him. But he knows he can also murder the people around him at the drop of a hat. And it's not just like I get frustrated and I snap somebody's neck. It's stuff like, hey, I accidentally jump too fast out of the way of a loud noise and I splatter somebody against a wall. His body it can be a murderous weapon easily. If he yanks somebody back too fast, he will snap their neck. So he's got to keep himself under constant control. And yet he has made choices really honorable. I mean, in many ways, Superman, and I'm over a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but Superman is an honorable guy who is the best of us because he has all these abilities and he has this method of being more than humanity, but he has chosen to both be everything he can be with his powers and also limit how he acts and how he behaves and keep himself in constant check while at the same time not putting himself above others. There's a sense of self-sacrifice and a sense of being truly a servant to the people around him. He has embraced, in many ways, way more than Spider-Man, the idea of great power comes great responsibility. This is a guy who holds himself to the top level of ethical code, and there's a million things to go around with that. And he has the same kind of desires and urges and spirit as a lot of people, but he knows the consequences of his actions. He had, at a very early age, he adopted that, inherited it, internalized it, and now he's living with it. And I think that creates an interesting thing about Superman where, as a character, he can be everything and chooses to be both more than what is expected and less than what he's capable of at any given moment. One of the cool things about Superman comics, and they write him really well, is that he has the ability to let loose and just annihilate his opponents. And yet he doesn't, knowing that the choices he's making and not going all out both could save lives because the impact of a major fight with him could level a city, but also destroy lives because if he doesn't put a villain down, in a decisive way, that villain could go out and massacre a town or he's constantly conflicted and he strives to do the right thing. This is Superman to me. That's my take of him. And I think it's a man who is not just tempted on a constant basis with all of the strength and powers and everything else at his disposal, but a man who also chooses to be better than his baser desires every second of every day. It's why you didn't see comic books and where it would wreck Superman if you did stories of him as a teenager and he was using his X-ray vision to like peek through shower walls at the girls' locker room or look through girls' clothes. You don't see those panels because you shouldn't. I I, I can almost guarantee some dumbass comic writer is going to do it, but that would wreck who Superman is. That's not who he is. So anyway, that was a long explanation of to me what Superman is. Maybe that's a video. I should just say goodbye and that's it. But let's go into this video because at this point, 5 minutes in, I've gone through enough that the spoilers, like you've clicked away if you're worried about being spoiled. So I went to watch Superman movie. I didn't like it. It wasn't like I hated it. I wasn't watching complete garbage, but it was a little bit like a theme park ride that had no consequence or no meaning. And that is every moment of every scene had that effect on me. It was just you're watching a special effects clip show. You're watching scenes go from moment to moment to moment. And somebody put in a review, and it stuck with me because I think it's true. The movie has the and then this happened, and then this happened effect. There's a scene, and then the new scene happened, and then a new scene happened, and the new scene happened. And as a result, there's no real feeling of connection or tether to the story. A good story, and if you look at like Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, or you look at some of the better, versions of Superman, the comics that have been written, you will get stories where it's like this happened, but then something else happened which conflicted Superman, and then he had to do this, but then this happened. You get it's hard to explain, but there's a difference between a scene occurred which created this opportunity, but then this got in the way versus here's scene one that goes to scene two, that goes to scene three, that goes to scene four. It's a very linear movie. It's overburdened with special effects, but most superhero movies are. You can't fault it too much for that. But several of the special effects just look, I can't tell exactly, and I really hope Fantastic Four doesn't have the same problem, but it feels a little bit like they're trying to go for kind of a Dayglow comic book feel at times, and it's unnecessary and it actually starts to detract from the scene itself. To me, there's nothing wrong with the actors. They look more or less the part. I like Henry Cavill as much as anyone, and I guess I should say at this moment, I am not a Snyder bro, Snyderverse forever kind of person. I didn't hate those movies. I didn't love them either. I actually feel like they had a lot of the exact same problems that the James Gunn Superman had. I'm not, I didn't dislike Superman because I am angry about the Snyderverse. And neither or the Donnerverse or any other Superman version. I took this movie as a new thing that's its own product, and I decided whether I was going to be entertained by it, by itself, not, this movie in comparison to a Donner movie or in comparison to a Snyder movie or whatever it happened to be. The characters are all fine. They look more or less the part. I don't think there's any real inherent problem with, Superman or Lois or Perry or, Lex or any of these characters. The problem is, in many cases, the dialogue they're given. I mean, Lex Luthor is a fairly one-dimensional villain. There's not much. He's just a villain. There's nothing really to him. The other like Tessmacher and some of the other characters, they're just there's nothing to them. The Tessmacher Jimmy stuff, weird. And weird in a boring way, not weird in a good way. It's weird. It's tough to watch a movie where the actors and actresses are doing, fine. They're again, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not given much to work with. And that's my problem with this movie. The other problem is and I think a lot of superhero movies have this issue, is there's this desire to make the stakes super, super big in the movie. So in this instance, you have a third act with a black hole going on and the, Metropolis getting ripped out of, the earth and vanishing. I mean, like you have a world destroying threat. The problem with that is we all know the movie's not going to end with the earth all fucked up. So the more you've attempted to raise the stakes through CGI and black holes and all this other stuff, the less it's lowered the stakes because there's no believability that any of this stuff really matters. And the film suffers with that for a bunch of it. Look, it pains me to say this because I like Nathan Fillion and I liked Guy Gardner, and I think the Nathan Fillion Guy Gardner is probably one of the more entertaining, kind of quippy. By the way, I hated the Marvel humor. That is just they've got to inject that shit into every movie now, and it just sucks. But with Guy Gardner, it fits. That said, you could have cut Guy Gardner from the film; it wouldn't have really mattered. You could have cut Hot Girl from the film; it wouldn't have mattered. This will sound like a contradiction, but you could have cut Mr. Terrific, and it would have been fine. That said, Mr. Terrific was one of the better characters in the whole movie. The scenes with him were cool. Superhero movies, they're not meant to be high thought kind of drama, really engaged films. Yet they're supposed to be spectacles. But despite all the CGI and everything else, I don't really feel like we got great spectacles in this movie, with the exception of Mr. Terrific. He had good scenes. He had good dialogue. He looked cool. And like the stuff he was in felt like something you wanted to watch. The challenge is, I don't know. I can imagine. I don't know what the reception is, but how well this came off, I feel like they're going to rush into a Mr. Terrific, HBO series or movie. And I just hope whatever they do it well. Like get a good script writer. And maybe that's the biggest problem with Superman is I feel like the script just kind of sucked. The Ultraman stuff, not that interesting. The cameos, I mean, again, it felt like a clip show of a movie. And then we'll get to the kind of the elephant in the room, which is the retcon or reveal that Jor-El. Well, I mean, look, why are you ripping off Invincible? And unfortunately, myself and several of the people around me, kind of as conversation is happening as we're exiting the theater, everyone was of the impression that James Gunn stole the idea that Jor-El was basically, hey, Clark or Kal-El, go to that planet and just breed the shit out of all the women there, and that was not a good reveal. I think that it doesn't make Superman better to know that his adoptive parents, or sorry, his birth parents, in particular his dad, is a dick, and he learned better values from his birth parents. What it was trying to kind of say is that, hey, it's nature versus nurture. But by the way, if we really want to pull on that thread, that leads to some pretty crazy places. I'm not sure that you want that. But anyway, you're saying that nurture basically creates a good kind of human, because Superman is a good character. He does have a lot of those elements that I mentioned at the very beginning of the video that I want to see in Superman. But the reveal, and by the way, the exposure of Lex's plot, like Metropolis is getting fucking destroyed, and yet you're leaking a story that Luthor is a dick, and like nobody's going to be paying attention to that. Like their apartments and shit are flying up into space. Like, what are you? None of that makes any sense. The challenge with this movie is that it goes from scene to scene to scene. The dialogue and the script writing is pretty poor, all things considered. The stakes get lowered as the threats go up. And the retcon just, I'm sorry, anyone online who says this is a comics accurate Superman is full of shit. It is not. Unless your version of comics accurate is that he's got the glasses that, can hypnotize people, and he is, a decent guy. Yeah, Superman is a decent guy, but the reveal that Jor-El is a, the eugenics Nazi. I mean, like, I don't even know what you're doing with that. It's bad. And yeah, like I was saying, a bunch of people leaving the theater were like, oh, they stole this from Invincible. So how sad is that? You have a character who has existed for 80 years now. And the takeaway is Invincible, and I love Invincible, Kirkman and Otley. You ripped off a core part of the hero's origin from Invincible. And I'm not, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's what James Gunn necessarily did, but that looks terrible. you basically gave away kind of the origin and a lot of aspects of your character to a comic book that's what, 10 years old? I don't know. It's just sad. So there are good things about this film, and I encourage you very strongly to go out and watch it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Go look at it. It is a spectacle, which is cool, but it it is a disappointment. And as an anchor to a new DC universe, yeah, this isn't going to be a new DC universe. I understand James Gunn's going to have a lot of movies, but this is just this isn't the legacy of DC that it should be. I'm glad the movie's out. I'm glad that I get to go see it. There were certainly big aspects of it that was entertaining to me, but it wasn't for me. So I encourage you to go see the movie yourself and decide if it's for you. But that's what I liked and didn't like about it. And there you go. So thanks for listening.